Thank you so much for having me here. This is my second time in Brazil, and it's one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been to, most beautiful people I've ever seen. All the rumors are true. I'm here from Los Angeles, and I want to talk to you about courage in advertising. And this is something that we hear often in reference to individuals and people's individual acts, but not very often in reference to brands and their advertising, certainly. So speaking of courageous, as I was flying down here, I got a text message from my father who sent me an old article about Brazil banning all outdoor advertising from many, many years ago. That was the Cidade Limpa, is that right? Okay. Only thing I know how to say in Portuguese. The Clean City, which to me is an incredible example of courage. This is something that now with billboards being reintroduced slowly, I think is so incredibly innovative that the advertising dollars are being used to clean or maintain public works. So bathrooms and bridges and roads, and this to me is amazing, and if only an advertiser would have thought of this, I think you would have won any advertising award in the entire world, maybe even the Nobel Prize. So what I wanted to talk about are three different kinds of courage in advertising. The first is courage in formats, using new and emerging formats and technologies. The second is courage in storytelling and the types of stories that you choose. And the third, and most important, is courage in the face of controversy. Now, I want to give you a little bit of context about who I am and why I'm here, so you're not wondering the whole time who this person is on stage talking to you. So 6 years ago, I co-founded a company called Riot. You may have heard of it earlier this morning in the Oath presentation, because Riot is now the global creative agency for all of Oath. But 6 years ago, it was just three of us in a garage trying to figure out how to save the world. We decided that we wanted to create the first news organization ever in the history of the world that linked every single story that we posted to an action that the reader could take. So here's what's going on in the world, here's what you can do about it in one place. The goal was to make the news less depressing. Not quite mission accomplished yet. But at the time, there were, occasionally CNN or the New York Times would have a here's how you can help on disaster relief stories, but not across every story. This was a novel concept. And we were trying also to use content as an entry point for people to find causes that they cared about. Since the news is happening all the time, if we could hijack the news, link it to causes, people could use what they're already interested in and already clicking on to find their true purpose. Now, the name Riot is derived from this Martin Luther King Jr. quote, "A riot is the language of the unheard." Martin Luther King Jr. is, without a doubt, one of the most courageous men in American history. And with his vision as our North Star, we looked at media and advertising from the perspective of humanitarians. We were a team of humanitarian filmmakers who had never worked in media and who had never worked in advertising. But we thought, wouldn't it be incredible if we could harness the scale of media and of advertising to do more good in the world? In a way that's impossible if you're an aid worker and you're relying on donations and donor dollars to do good deeds in the world. And so we became obsessed with figuring out how we could harness media and how we could harness scale to create compassion and empathy. And to use technology, new technology, and storytelling to make what was important interesting. Because in order to get people to engage with a news story, you had to make it interesting. If it was really important but it was really boring, no one was going to care and no one was going to take action on any stories. Now, this is a screenshot from the very first virtual reality piece we ever created. This was actually the day after the Nepal earthquake, which was 3 years ago today, April 25th, 2015. A massive earthquake hit Kathmandu, and we were sending our co-founder out to help as a humanitarian again, and maybe to bring back some news as well. And we had just been trying to figure out how to use virtual reality. The very first virtual reality cameras had just come out. They were 3D printed rigs with some GoPros in them. And we were thinking that this might be an interesting place to try and use it. And what we came back with was the very first immersive footage of a disaster ever. I don't think we quite realized the implications of it at the time as we were stitching together this little Nepal dispatch and sideloading it into Samsung Gear VR headsets. But as soon as we released it online on the one 360 player out there, this was before YouTube 360, before Facebook 360, all of a sudden the New York Times is writing about it, the BBC is writing about it, celebrities are tweeting it. It was a huge success from the perspective of this was a media and a new technology that we had used to make something that was important interesting. And in this case, trying to use cutting-edge technology to create empathy. Now, the idea of using technology to create connections isn't a new one, but it seems like technology is being described more often than not as an adversary to empathy, with screen time replacing in-person time. We just don't think that's true at all. We think we absolutely can use new technology to create connections that would have otherwise been completely unfeasible. So after this was released, and all the platforms started creating their 360 players, they all went out to the major news organizations of the world and said, hey, create 360 videos for us. And the New York Times and the Huffington Post and the Associated Press all said, make what videos? We don't know how to do any of this. Looked around the ecosystem, and we were some of the only people that had been using this tool because we were like, this is the way we get people to take action on our news stories. And so, when the opportunity came for acquisition, which was less than a year after the very first virtual reality film we made, we said yes. This was 2 years ago today. April 25th, they announced the acquisition of Riot by Verizon's AOL. And for us, we went, again, from literally 3 people in a garage 6 years ago to part of the biggest telecom company in the entire country, Verizon. And again, for us, the idea and the opportunity to create impact at scale, we were now moving into a place where the scale already existed and all we had to do was bring the impact. And so, from our first day at Oath, our mandate was this: consumer-first advertising formats, which we learned was just a fancy way of saying advertising that doesn't suck. And so, we were able to continue making the virtual reality films, we were able to continue making the documentary films, and anything else we wanted, but we had to figure out how to apply it to advertising. How do we use the skills that we learned as journalists and as first responders and as storytellers trying to get people to take action on the news and put it towards advertising? And we'd never made a traditional advertisement before, so we tried our hand at one. This was our first traditional ad or commercial. And it was one of the projects that we worked on immediately after we were acquired, and it was essentially an advertisement for ourselves. We were building an augmented reality product that let you use your phone, use any image anywhere as an image trigger in order to be a vehicle for additional kinds of content. This was before Apple put ARKit onto every single iPhone, so we were a little bit ahead. But we had to figure out a way of showing this technology to people without being able to bring an instruction manual to every single person. So, this is what we made. Sound?
All right, we're going on a field trip to a museum, and not just any museum, it's actually the most famous museum in the entire world. So has anyone been to a museum in another country before ever? No. Not even another state? Wow. Well, this is a treat.
Up, just a tiny bit? Yeah.
Yeah? Are you ready to go to the museum? Yeah! 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Open the gate.
The museum is open. What do you guys think?
Where's the art?
So what if we told you guys there was artwork just sitting here, hidden right before your eyes? Oh. You wanna hold it?
That's the magic. That's what you were expecting.
Pull up this picture.
been to the Louvre.
Let's make a funny face. That's a good one.
Where does this rank now on your favorite museums list?
Top favorite.
So this ended up as an experiment. Thank you. So this was a total experiment. We had this idea on a Monday. We created the augmented reality triggers over the week. I was at a flea market. I get a phone call saying, hey, can you come be in this film? On the way up to a dinner, I stop in for an hour. We film it with a friend of ours. And when we released it, we got all this press of, oh my gosh, AR being used for social impact. The same way that when we used VR the first time, it just hadn't been used in that way. It was like, oh my God, VR being used for news and disaster reporting rather than just gaming and porn. How novel. Same with this AR. And the reason that it worked, and the reason that, much to our surprise, we were nominated for an Emmy for Outstanding Promotional Announcement with this, was because of a couple things that we ended up taking and applying to every one of the ads that we did in the future. The first was working backwards from the headline that we wanted. This was more or less the headline that we wanted, but we had to figure out what piece of content would get us that headline. Two was we weren't going for scale with the experience itself. That was always the biggest thing with advertisers was, well, this VR experience can't reach scale, and well, that AR experience can't reach scale. No, of course not. It's a brand new freaking technology. You definitely can't reach scale with it, but guess how many people saw this video? Millions, even though 10 kids saw the actual experience. So yes, you can create scale with a traditional medium displaying or advertising the new medium. And three, and last, was it's not very often that you get to live through a complete platform shift. What we're seeing right now is a platform shift. Whether it's the platform shift, I don't know yet, but it is a platform shift, which means you as an advertiser could very easily be the very first brand to ever do something in a space in the history of the world. And that doesn't happen very often, and this is why courage in formats becomes so exciting. This is how you get the headlines. This is how you get the innovation awards, is when you're the very first to do something ever. And the key is also to make the advertising aspirational not only to the people who you want to buy your product, but for you as a brand too. This technology wasn't at scale. Were we gonna take it to scale? Maybe, we hoped so, but maybe this would be the forcing function for us as a company to reach there. So, at Oath, we ended up doing a ton of first ever virtual reality projects with a lot of major brands. This one was a wonderful one. Clorox came in asking us what we could do to help them sell more bleach. Well, we don't know how to sell bleach, but what we do know is that Clorox has an amazing program that they've been doing for years and years in the developing world called this Clean Water Project, which means tiny amounts of bleach can be used to make water potable or drinkable if it's not. And so that was the story that we wanted to tell. And so we did it in virtual reality. Same with PepsiCo, same with American Family Insurance. We had an AR product that we put on the cover of Time Inc. and Sports Illustrated. We just found out we're nominated for a second Emmy for a Sports Illustrated piece that we did with a world famous Laird Hamilton surfer in Chicama, Peru. And this was all something that we had just never done before. It was all a total experiment, and trying to get brands to agree to come on board and join the experiment was part of the goal. So in addition to being courageous with formats, you have to be courageous with your stories. And we ended up getting brands like Gatorade and Apple and a number of others to fund documentaries that we wanted to do. And these are stories that deserve to be told, that fit with the brand values. And for us, it was so exciting to be able to tell the stories of incredible individuals, weave in the brands very gently into the storyline, and then take it to Tribeca Film Festival and Sundance Film Festival. This film, The Rugby Boys of Memphis, got screened 3 times on ESPN. Not as a commercial, but as a part of their programming. And this is one of the things that we kept trying to do, and that I know I, as a consumer, want to see advertisers do. I don't want to be interrupted by one more commercial. If I can help it in my entire life, I will spend money and I will spend time to never be interrupted from the entertainment that I want to see by an advertisement. Make this your advertising. So Rugby Boys of Memphis was nominated for a Cannes Lion, but we ended up losing to this. And this was a film that many of you maybe have seen. It was a really beautiful 17-minute film that Santander Bank had, that Santander Bank put out, and basically what it was trying to take a generation of people who don't trust banks, millennials. How do you sell a banking product to someone who doesn't trust banks? Well, by reframing the conversation about what is valuable. Is it experiences or is it money? And this film ended up not only being, you know, a Cannes winner and whatever. People like to win awards for their ads, but more importantly, it was hugely successful in terms of ROI. The video was viewed over 7 million times. It was ranked higher on many different video viewing platforms and some of the major blockbusters. And they got 35% of all of the signups that they wanted for the year in just 2 weeks surrounding the release of this. Because again, no one is being annoyed by this ad. No one is going to be annoyed after they watch an amazing piece of content when it says, brought to you by X brand. They are going to be so stoked that you, the brand, brought them this piece of content that was on its own, stood alone as very, very good. And this was also a huge success because, and sorry, give me a second because my notes are one page behind somehow. So the other thing is some ads can actually change a conversation. They can change a conversation and they can change culture. So this is what I want to talk about mostly, my guess is most people have heard of The Fearless Girl, right? Raise your hand if you have not heard of this. Yes, because it was absolutely everywhere in the world for a while. And for those of you who haven't, this showed up in New York City one day, and all of a sudden, everyone in the world was talking about it. There was a girl standing in front of the massive Wall Street bull to try and raise awareness about the lack of female representation in the financial fields. Now, people would not shut up about this, and at Cannes Lions, where I was last year, I participated in a panel talking about all of the nominees for outdoor advertising, which this, of course, swept. And I sat in front of a room full of marketing and advertising executives and asked them how many of them thought it was important for brands to take a stand on important social issues. And one hand went up in a room about half of these people. And I wasn't trying to call anyone out. I was legitimately curious because this is what we were just talking about on the panel, was that more than half of the winning ad campaigns for that year had some sort of a social message. They were socially charged, or they addressed some relevant political or social issue like immigration, like women's rights to choose, like voting, like climate change. And so I expected a very different response from the audience. And it got me wondering how many brands out there make using their voices for the greater good a priority within their business strategy. Now, it was only 24 years ago when IKEA first aired the very first commercial with a gay couple ever. And it's clear at this point, 2020 hindsight, they were on the right side of history since hundreds and hundreds of brands have now taken a stand on this issue. You practically are seen as tone deaf if you haven't been inclusive of LGBT community in your messaging at this point. But 24 years ago, that was a massive controversy. And so it's not just the right thing to do, it is effective marketing. And that's what I want to try and convince everyone of today. Oreo, for instance, in this, struggled for years to reach new markets. They couldn't get anyone but housewives to buy their product. And it wasn't until this Rainbow Oreo Facebook post that kicked off a big campaign of theirs that capitalized on current events and political events that they finally hit the nail on the head. All of a sudden, within 100 days, and this was their 100th anniversary campaign, kicking off with this and integrating other things like Elvis Week and the Mars rover landing, they became one of the most talked about brands of the year, just from a social Facebook campaign. But kicked it off with this, to let everyone know where they stood on the issue. Now, 80% of all the mentions online after this came out were positive. However, all the news wrote about was what a controversial moment it was. It wasn't that controversial. 80% is a large majority, in my opinion. But that is always a risk. You always run the risk of a potential backlash if you're a brand taking a stand on an issue. And my opinion, as one person, is that you can't let potential short-term loss of a few customers stand in the way of you making a long-term difference in the lives of people and in the lives of your company. Now, some marketers might push back on this, and I would welcome that conversation, because I think when brands avoid taking a stand on tough social issues or participating in the news cycle, it's a missed opportunity. Pretty much always. And there's endless strategizing about voice and tone and brand identity and personality, but it has to also include strategies and strategizing around a moral framework. Some foundation of what the brand believes in and what it believes is worth fighting for. What is the future that is worth fighting for? Now, this is not secondary to testing out different social strategies and to designing a voice. It is foundational. A brand's morals and beliefs should inform the way that it interacts with its consumers and with society, and not the other way around. Now, brands, I don't think, can afford to play Switzerland while the rest of the world takes a side. Consumers want companies that harness their power for good and not stand back and let atrocities happen. So this just happened, speaking of the news cycle. Who didn't hear about this? This was a big, big moment in music. The first time ever a rap artist won the Pulitzer Prize, generally a prize reserved for the best journalism in the entire world. I'm pretty sure when Kendrick started rapping, he was not expecting this. I know for a fact when Kobe Bryant started playing basketball, he was not expecting to win an Oscar. I'm also pretty sure Trump did not expect that this would happen either to him. So why can't we aim higher as advertisers, as marketers, not just a Cannes Lion, not just a Clio, not just selling some more potato chips and selling some more beer and selling some cars? How about an Oscar? How about a Grammy Award? Or a Pulitzer? How about a freaking Nobel Peace Prize? Why not aim higher? We have all the money in the world to do it. Why the hell not? Now, in February, I left Riot to join Maverick. You can notice a theme in the companies that I work for. Now, Maverick was looking for someone to run social impact for the organization. Maverick is the largest music management company in the entire world. It was started as a record label by a very famous Maverick, Madonna herself, in 1992. And again, the reason I wanted to join a company with the scale of Maverick is to achieve impact at scale. Scale is not interesting for scale's sake. Money is not interesting for money's sake. Capital is only interesting insofar as you use it to make the world around you better. Now, collectively, the artists at Maverick reach over 1 billion people a month. These are them all. You might have heard of some of them. And it was drilled into me for 2 years at Oath, build brands people love. What does brand love look like? Well, I can tell you, if you've ever been to a Paul McCartney concert, or you've ever been to a Miley Cyrus concert, or you've ever been to a Nicki Minaj concert, that is what brand love looks like. Those people freak out. And all Miley Cyrus wants to do, and all Paul McCartney want to do, are be creative and make the world a better place. Most of the artists on this roster, it's the same thing. And these are the ones that I have the honor of working with every single day to try and figure out how to take the scale that they have and turn it into what's good for the world. So, I will leave you with something that's an opportunity for involvement with this roster that will give you a way of not only reaching the 1 billion fans that these guys touch on a monthly basis directly, but also leaves the world better. Because all of these artists want to do good, and I know that all of you guys want to do good. So, come see me after if you are interested in joining us in one of the largest philanthropic events in the music industry history with all of these artists. I believe in the ability of everyone in this room to make an impact and to do it at scale. You represent some of the biggest companies in the entire world, and you're advertisers. But that doesn't mean you can't also be activists and philanthropists and entrepreneurs and award-winning filmmakers. You can have your name on the credits of some incredible piece of content that you fund. And most importantly, I know you're people that are trying your damnedest to leave the world better than how you found it. So let's use advertising to do it. Thank you.
Could you help us to a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, questions.
Questions. Estou conseguindo convencer todo mundo. Mas vocês fizeram uma pergunta só para o Cláudio, que era super legal a apresentação dele.
And I hope everyone could understand, even though this was in English.
Hi, Molly. Clarissa, I'm a journalist, and my question is, do you think brands, not only in advertising but in content itself, they ought to make to take a stand, to make statements whenever they are delivering content to their consumers, their clients, their fans, their followers?
I think you should always take the opportunity if it's appropriate. And I think determining what you don't comment on is as powerful as what you do. It can't be that every brand has an opinion on every single issue in the entire world. It has to be ones that are relevant to you, that come from the leadership or that come from the team or the entire company. It can either be top down or bottom up. If the CEO really believes in something, make that a reality. Or if a lot of the employees really believe in something, make that a reality. Or from outside in, if the consumers, you read on them that they really want something to happen, give that to them. But I would say that it does have to be strategic. It can't just be every single news event we have an opinion on and every single crisis in the entire world we're going to try and help. Make it a part of the strategy, just like you would your social media strategy or just like you would your brand tone and voice. You're not going to always be funny and also really serious and earnest and also all of these things. It is one lane, but this piece is mission critical. That's what I think.
Mais uma pergunta, pessoal. Aposto que a Zazá tem uma pergunta. Você pode entregar o microfone para aquela moça ali, por favor? Sem pressão, pessoal. Você pode ficar tranquilo, sem pressão.
Hi, Molly. Well, you live and work in LA, and it's a very open-minded state and city with huge technology, right, and inspiration. Do you think this kind of inspiration, courage in advertising can be found anywhere, any country, and how do you think about it in Brazil?
Yes, absolutely. I think it can be found anywhere. And I think some of the most interesting and innovative advertising is coming from places outside the United States. So when I was, this Santander Bank example, that's a Spanish campaign. Some of the other advertising that we were talking about on this Cannes panel came from Mexico, came from other places in Central America and South America. Much of the advertising that we're seeing that is super innovative is being done on a smaller scale because it is a little less risky in some cases, I think. And because there's great creative talent in these places. But when Nike wants to do a campaign where they take a little magnetic ponytail and give it out to you at stores, and you put it on street crossing signs so that the street crossing signs look like a woman with a ponytail, that was just a local rollout in Central America. That didn't happen in the United States. I wish it had. But it was a smaller market, and it's a way to test things and before seeing if they're going to be worth a big national rollout. So yes, of course, there's tremendous creative talent here, and there are just as many problems here as there are in the United States, as there are in Europe, as there are in Asia. and a ton of money to think about how to solve them in addition to how to sell your products. If you solve a problem for people, they are going to be more likely to buy your products. That, to me, makes a ton of sense. And I think that if there's a utility to the advertisement like that, or if there's some sort of a message that people can get behind, whether or not they end up buying your product, they become an evangelist of your brand. And so I don't wear a ton of Nike sneakers, but I'm standing here talking about Nike. I guess I wear Converse, so Converse is owned by Nike. I wear a lot of Nikes. But I'm standing here in front of you. I don't use Santander Bank, but I'm here talking to you about this. So you can create evangelists for your product, even if they don't use your product, which I think is equally effective.
Amazing. One more? Outra chance, outro microfone ali, por favor.
Hi, my name is Patrick. Thanks for your presentation. When I think of courage in advertising, I think about the controversies that you hear about major brands being next to, Islamic videos on YouTube. And I'm guessing, what do you consult with those clients that you have when their brands are associated with things that are actually causing, the opposite effect of the social impact they want to do?
Well, this might be a controversial statement, but don't advertise on YouTube. I don't know. For me, you're in the way of someone trying to get to the content they actually want to watch. And again, people are paying hundreds of dollars a year to avoid that kind of thing with YouTube Red and with Spotify Premium and with Hulu Premium and with all sorts of things like that. You can't control that kind of distribution either. I'm not suggesting that you put a 17-minute short documentary or a 10-minute short brand documentary on YouTube and run ads in front of it either, unless you can control it. You have to figure out how to control the message and how to control the distribution. And to me, that's less risky than something like the PepsiCo Kendall Jenner ad, which I would say was very well intentioned, right? They wanted to talk about something that was happening in culture, the Black Lives Matter movement, the protest movement. The problem with that was that there was a Pepsi can in every frame. Take the brand out of branded content. Take it out. Because, again, people don't want to feel like they're being sold to. They just want great entertainment. They want great content. And if the content stands on its own, and if you can look around and say, that was an amazing story, or that was a really cool AR/VR experience, or that really made an impact in a lot of people's lives, no one is going to be mad that your brand has a little logo at the end of it, or that there's tons and tons of news out there linking your brand to that amazing project. The problem is when it's too heavy-handed with the brand, or when you're not controlling the distribution and you're shoving it down people's throats on a medium that they don't want to receive it on. So I think that there's plenty of ways for it to go wrong if you have some other motive than making incredible art. But if that is your motive, you're going to win every time.
Uma salva de palmas para o Mário.